Hello, today I'd like to show you how to make a fairly simple block for a fun little quilt, or it could be a large quilt of course, and I'm just going to use some delicious fabrics today. I've got some very nice chocolatey fabric set in my square here. So this is going to be an 8.5 inch block that will finish in at 8 inches when it's sewn in. And it's, as I said, a fairly simple block and great for showcasing something in particular or maybe brighter colours. I have actually done a pattern for this quilt, and I'll show you a version of it shortly, where I've obviously used quite bright colours. And I've called it Squared. It's available for purchase and download on my website, gourmetquilter.com. But I just thought if I went through the process and show you just how delicious it can be, that might be a nice idea. So I've obviously found some very delicious chocolate fabric here, and I've just gone through and picked out some of the colours of the fabrics. So we're starting off in the centre with a 4.5 inch cut square, and then I've cut some 2.5 inch strips to border the block with, and they're just cut so that you sew the two sides on first and then the two longer sides. So the way I've cut them, I've actually got 6 different fabrics that I'm using. I've just used some fairly sort of plainish marbled fabrics on this particular occasion, and I've laid them. I've got 6 different ones, so I've laid them all together. I've ironed my strips. I've cut the strips across the width of the fabric, and I've ironed them, and I've popped them into 2 piles of 3 so that I can cut them all together, because I kind of like to get things done all in one go. Now, because my squares are 4.5 inches, which I've also already cut, and I just thought I'd show you that if you lay things out and line them up with the markings on your board, you can actually cut all 6 fabrics at once. And so I would need to cut 4.5 inch strips, they're 2.5 inches wide, to go either side. So I'd need to cut 2 of those. So I'd come along and do the next 4.5, and there are my sides. Well, then I'm needing to go into the next strip for my other pieces, but I just thought I'd show you how I lay my fabrics out so I can kind of cut everything all together, and then I would need to go into the next strip to do the next lot of blocks and things. So that's how I do the cutting. I've got squares ready, and I'm just going to quickly pop a couple of blocks together just so you can see how easy they are to get together. I've got some very, very nice chocolate coloured fabrics sitting here. We've got some lovely mixed dark and milk chocolate, and a nice white chocolate going on this lot at this stage. So what I've got is 2 blocks that I'm going to sew, and you can chain piece these blocks, which makes life fairly fast. So this is quite a fast quilt. Of course, you don't have to have chocolate fabric, you can have any kind of fabrics you like. And I'm just going to sew, I've just got my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I would chain piece the blocks. So you just put one of the shorter strips on each side of the square, so this would be quite a good one to use up all sorts of leftovers as well, because you could have all the centres different. I've chosen to have my centres all the same, which strictly speaking in a box of chocolates would not be the case, would it? Now I'm going to come back and pop the other strip on the other side. So you need 2 strips the same length as your square, and then 2 longer that will be long enough to go right the way across. So because I've started with 4.5 inch squares, these are 4.5 inches long, and my next strips to go right the way across will be 8.5 inches cut. Okay, so I've got that far, and I'm just going to quickly press those. It's not that quilts always have to be quick and easy, but isn't it nice when they are? Okay, so I'm just pressing my seams, I'm pressing them out into the strips. It doesn't really matter which way they go. And then I'm going to put the longer strips on that I've already pre-cut. So these ones are cut at 8.5 inches, so that they're long enough to go all the way along. So same thing, I can chain piece these on. So it's just a matter of working out how many blocks you want to make and cutting your strips ready to go. Chocolate one, don't forget the white chocolate. Any form of chocolate is really good. can pop the other strips on the other side. And we're nearly done. I do like to have quilts largely all cut out before I start sewing, because then I find if I've got a few minutes I might be able to do a whole heap of chain piecing and they're kind of ready then for the next stage. I don't necessarily have to make the whole quilt all in one go, but if I've got it all cut, then I'm ready to sew another section of it. A little bit like a kit, I guess that's why I cut kits to sell as well, because I kind of like the cutting out stage. Okay, so I'm going to press these now. I like to press from the right side. In general it works really well for me. And there we have the next couple of blocks. So I've already made a couple of these, so I can just show you. So I've got 6 different surrounds, but I've got the same centre each time. And if I was going to join them all up, and I probably would alternate the direction of the seams for joining up, just so that when you're joining them they're not joining seam to seam. If you turn them round you haven't got any of that sort of matching of seams to do, which is quite helpful at times to be able to do it that way. And so I think that looks quite fun, and I'll continue on making some more blocks. And as I said, these centres could be different, but I'm wanting to make a chocolate quilt, so that works really for me. They're kind of like chocolates in a box, the way that they're set out in those squares. And I'm going to probably not put a binding on. My pattern, I don't have a binding on this particular one, and I've got this just delicious chocolatey stripe that I'll probably use for my binding. So that was just a little bit of an idea of an 8-inch block that you could make using some nice feature fabric and some other colours. And I have made one of these quilts. It's slightly smaller than my pattern is, and I've made this one in flannel fabric, so it's a nice, it's a square quilt. It's called Squared and it's square, so that's kind of effective, isn't it? As you can see, I've got some different colours going on in the centres. They're not all the same, and then I've got the different colours surrounding the blocks as well. So you can use a whole variety of different fabrics in the one quilt. And again, I haven't done a border, I've just bound that, so it does go together fairly quickly. And I've used those lovely soft flannels on this one, and I've actually popped a fleece on the back because I just wanted it to be a real little snuggly quilt. So that was just another idea for you to do a squared block.